Hi and welcome to my video. Today I wanted to do a book review of Queenie by Candice Williams. I really enjoyed Queenie. I read it recently. I read it in a day, which is super unlike me. I just powered through. I got kind of really hooked into it and I felt really mixed about the story actually until I just reflected on it, and the more I've reflected on it, the more I found things that I just really want to talk about and more that I just need to share, because I think this book does more than people realise. At least for me, there's so many things that really struck me and meant a lot to me in it that are explored, that I don't see explored often enough in literature. So I wanted just to talk about them. So Queenie came out in 2019. It was quite popular at the time. I know that it's been like all over BookTube, on and off really, especially this year as people are becoming more Black literature savvy, I guess. But I feel like I should start with just talking about what Queenie's about. Just a little overview of the plot. I will try to keep it spoiler free, but some of the things I do want to talk about later on are relevant to plot events, so some things might be spoiled. It should all be minor spoilers, no like big spoilers. Yeah, so Queenie is about our main character, Queenie, who is in the midst of a relationship breakdown. So her and her partner have decided to take a 3-month break. She's had to move out and it's just not going well for her. She's not coping well with it, and throughout the novel we follow her as she goes on this like self-destruct mode. Her mental health starts to decline. She starts getting like very anxious and panicky. She stops performing at work. She's a journalist and she stops performing at work. She starts trying to cope through sex and starts sleeping with a lot of people, a lot of men, which is fine. She's a very sex positive person, which I totally support, but it's used as her coping mechanism, and she sort of starts to just drown. Basically she's drowning, and what's interesting is that we follow Queenie's dynamics with her relationships, her friendships, with her colleagues and her family. She's a Black British woman of Caribbean descent living in London, and it's just really interesting. She has a lot of like friends. She has her close friends are both white and black, and it's interesting seeing the dynamic between them. Queenie is someone that has a lot of childhood trauma as well as like intergenerational trauma, you know, from being from a black family, but she also has her own childhood trauma around her stepdad and men, so it's like all these things play into her breakdown, into her self-destruction, and we follow her as she hits literally rock bottom and has to build herself back up again. And it's done pretty well. It's kind of darkly comic and it's an enjoyable read, but yeah, I think I want to talk about things I didn't like so much about the book and then go on to what I did like. And what I did like section is the part where I have lots to say and why I think this book should be read. So what I didn't really like is that Queenie as a character, I didn't like her very much. She is very selfish and self-centered, and I think part of that is her character, and she's struggling with her mental health and everything, so she doesn't have the emotional space, I guess, to be considerate of others or to be there for others. But she is very, very, very selfish, particularly with her best friend Darcy, who's someone she works with, and Darcy like repeatedly tries to like talk about her own relationship issues, and Queenie just like doesn't give a fuck and just cuts her off all the time. And I thought, oh, maybe that's going to lead to some sort of like conflict in their relationship and then be resolved, and Queenie has to realise she needs to be there for her friends as well as have them be there for her. But it doesn't. Darcy just puts up with her shit all the time, and it's just, Darcy's the best character in this book. She just stays by Queenie's side the entire time. She's always on team Queenie. She supports her throughout, even though Queenie's not very good as a friend to her, and it bothered me that wasn't resolved. And I know this whole book is about being a work in progress. She's recovering from her issues, not recovered, but it just bothered me that she treated her friend quite poorly and there was just nothing about it, and it's just like, oh, Darcy's just a great friend and Queenie's fine with it, and I was just like, that didn't feel right. I also had issue with the character Tom. I'm a very character driven person apparently, but I had the issue with Tom, and Tom is Queenie's ex. It starts off where you think they're on a 3-month break. The 3 months turns to 6 months, And the whole time, even though she's, you know, sleeping with the people, she's still hanging on to the idea that her and Tom are going to get together because she still loves him. And throughout the story, we get like little drops of their past relationship and how things maybe aren't as they seem, and how maybe they weren't right for each other, and how Queenie obviously wasn't ready to be vulnerable in their relationship, and how that impacted on it. But also how him being a white man and his white family interacted with Queenie, and how that impacted their relationship, because they weren't very understanding, they were very middle class and not very accepting of Queenie, and could say some very offensive things and that'd be okay. So Tom, I didn't really like him as a character, which is fine. I don't think we're supposed to like him, and he is very cruel to Queenie actually in the end. I was angry at him, rightfully so, for how he treated Queenie in the end, but he's still kind of put on a pedestal, and all the issues in their relationship are sort of still put on Queenie for being quite closed off and for not being able to be, I guess, emotionally available with him. But he's also does a lot of wrong, and I feel like in the end she's still like, oh Tom, I still want you, and I will get over you, but I still and I just thought like, Queenie, he's an asshole. Come on, man, you must realise that he wasn't there for you. He was like okay with his family being super racist. Like, come on, man. And that bothered me, that he was still put on a pedestal, just in the book, by the book in general, but also by Queenie. And I was like, come on. I know she takes time to recover and grief to recover from relationships, but Jesus, he's just, he was not it. I was not okay with him. But those were like my major grievances, just how those sort of relationships played out and felt somewhat unresolved, which I guess is the nature of the book, that things take time. But they were things that almost for me were just like, maybe want to take off a star. But for things that I liked, is that this book for me had such an accurate portrayal of what it's like to be a black British woman, and the way that Queenie's black identity is portrayed feels quite real to me. The fact that her blackness is something that is always present on her mind, it's something that she always has to deal with and interact because of the society we live in, is just so legit. And I think that's something that gets like overlooked a bit, or people think that maybe that's some of the reviews I read, people were like, is that really what it's like? And I think, yeah, because when you're black, and I can only speak as a black British person, it's not something you can put down, you know, it's not something you can stop thinking about, it's something that's always on your mind because of the way society is, because you have to be on it all the time, and it's something she comes face to face with nearly every day. Something comes up, there's a comment, there's, I don't know, an interaction with a person, she reads something, sees something, and it just reminds her of her blackness and her identity. And I think that is quite accurate, and that almost like the burden of that as well is something that needs to be talked about more, and something that Queenie sort of carries and she struggles with, and it can be a struggle. And I think I really like that aspect of it, and in particular the aspect of her black identity that I thought was done really well was how it is fetishized. And I'm gonna mess up saying fetishized and fetishism, but I'm gonna try my best. But Queenie sleeps with a lot of white men, and the way that they fetishize her blackness and her body is horrific, but done well, and something that is not talked about enough. I don't think that the way black bodies are fetishized is talked about enough, and something that is super real in society and happens a lot, something I've experienced, something I don't know, but I assume basically all black people have experienced, or people of colour. And the way that she feels powerless and able to voice her feelings about it and stop it, the way that people, for example, like a mild example of fetishism of her body is like people saying that, wanting to taste her like chocolate or something, and that's a small example. There's much bigger, but even that is offensive. And when she tries to voice her opinion on it and saying she doesn't like it, she gets dismissed or shut down because it's not it's not racist in the way that it's not saying something negative about her blackness. It's not seen as racist, but it is. It's objectifying her and referring to her as food as well is something that is not okay. It goes back to, I'm not even going to go into the history of it, but it does go back into like colonial times, and the things that black people are often like turned into kinks about is the food wise is usually stuff that was traded during slavery, and people don't realise that. And it's just, yeah, it's just done really well, and the fact that she's powerless to challenge it because the men she interacts with don't listen to her. Her friends can dismiss it, and the disparity between her experience as a black person and her white friends' experiences is done well as well, because she might try and explain something but they don't really get it, and it's not their fault. It's not because they're bad people, it's just because they don't have the lived experience of it. And so Queenie having to sort of feel alone and deal with this is something that I think is also done well. But in terms of fetishism, I was like, yeah, on board. I was super on board with it, and it's super hard to challenge because people think it's a complimentary to, you know, call you brown sugar, or to, you know, sexualize black bodies in such a way, especially, you know, with black men. It's something that we're all aware, you know, what people say about black men's bodies and body parts. We all know what the rumour is, and it's actually something that's quite harmful and hurtful, and it goes too far, and it's something that's always there, the way that people think it's a compliment to objectify your body in such a way for its blackness, for its size, for its figure, whatever relating to your blackness, that it's actually very offensive and racist. And how that comes up so often, it comes up so naturally and all the time throughout this book, constantly. Queenie's, like, the men she's with, the white men she's with, they fetishize her, and she's sick of it, and she tries to say stuff, and sometimes she just doesn't even bother. And how dismissed she is just done so well. I really really appreciated that, because it's something I haven't really read properly, like in this way, in a novel before. And when I read it, it's like, so, I don't know, it just made me feel seen, because it's something that I've come across a lot in my life as well, as a black woman, as a mixed race woman. You know, it's being fetishised as something exotic and ambiguous and like something mysterious and maybe forbidden is something that comes up, and that's not okay, and it's not good, and it's something that needs to change, because it dehumanises and it objectifies black people, not just women, men as well. And I appreciate it being in this book, and it's something that I don't hear talked about. People don't seem to talk about that. But it's true, it's there, it happens, and I just really, really appreciate it. And for me, it's like, when we read about these things in books, we need to have these conversations, we need to talk about this. Let's stop fetishizing black bodies, let's stop fetishizing people of colour. Let's like talk about how annoying and offensive and racist it is through books like these. I appreciate it, even though Queenie as a character could grate on me. She could grate on me and I didn't necessarily like her as a character. I appreciate her so much and I appreciate the book, and I'm really glad I read it. And I do encourage you to read it, and just to keep your eyes open for all these things that are very realistic and do happen but aren't necessarily talked about. It's just, yeah, it's a good read. It's a really good read. It's a good book. I scream bad. You hear it? Okay. It's just, yeah, it's just well done. And, yeah, I don't feel like I have much more to say about this book, to be honest. But yeah, it's a good read. I can understand why this book might not be for everyone. Queenie is really fucking annoying. But it's portrayal of blackness in society, of relationships between people of colour and their white friends and family, and like the impact it has on her mental health, as well as everything else she's dealing with. It's just good. And the portrayal of mental health and how she just like how the way she solves her problems, it's not through finding men or her relationships, it's by doing something about it herself, by getting therapy, by realising that if things are going to change, she needs to change them, is good. I liked it. The more I think about it, the more I like it. I do. I think if it wasn't for those minor issues I had about that I mentioned before, it probably would have been a higher rating. But for me, it's definitely a solid 4 stars, and which is really good. But yeah, I think that's everything I had to say about Queenie. It feels good just to get it out. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.